In 1922, the Valley of the Kings witnessed something even the archaeologists weren't prepared for. A small excavation team broke through the seal of a chamber untouched for more than 2,000 years. But the moment their lanterns lit the room, the lead archaeologist reportedly staggered back, turned pale, and became violently sick. Whatever they saw inside was so disturbing that the chamber was resealed within hours. Artifacts packed away. Photographs stamped restricted. Notes locked in private archives. And here's the truth no museum curator wants the public asking about. They didn't just uncover objects. They uncovered evidence of a system, a brutal, organized practice deliberately erased from textbooks, softened in documentaries, and hidden in academic footnotes almost no one reads. By the end of this video you're going to learn the 3 secrets that were sealed in these tombs for millennia. Number 3. The selection ritual that publicly humiliated girls as young as 7. Number 2. The archaeological evidence modern museums quietly refuse to display, and why schools ban this topic from the curriculum. Number 1. The confession of one priest that shattered 3,000 years of silence and changed everything scholars believed about ancient Egypt. Alright, if you're ready to step into the part of history Egyptologists tried to bury, keep watching because what you're about to hear cannot be unheard. Let's go to the beginning. For nearly 3,000 years, from 300 BCE to around 300 BCE, families across Egypt dreamed of a single honor: having their daughters chosen for temple service. These girls were called the Pure Ones, or God's wives. The official version? They lived sacred lives, served in holy rituals, and brought divine blessing to their families. Parents offered their daughters willingly, proudly. But here's the question scholars avoid. Why does the ancient Egyptian word HMT and R, usually translated as sacred virgin, show up in older texts with a second meaning? A meaning scribes tried to hide in later copies. When researchers finally got unrestricted access to the papyri in the 1960s, they discovered something horrific. Previous translations had been sanitized, cleaned up, edited to protect modern readers. The real meaning? Most museums still refuse to print it. Worse, this wasn't one rogue temple or one corrupt priest. Archaeology confirms this system existed across at least 7 major temple complexes: Karnak, Luxor, Dendera, Abydos, Edfu, Philae, and Kamambo. Conservative estimates suggest over 10,000 girls were subjected to what I'm about to describe. Some scholars argue the real number may have reached 50,000. These weren't criminals. Not slaves. Just ordinary children from ordinary families, farmers, craftsmen, merchants, who thought they were giving their daughters to the gods. So how were these girls chosen? Every year during the festival of Opet, families gathered outside the temple. Priests would inspect the girls, publicly. But the real selection? It took place inside a sealed inner chamber. No parents. No witnesses. Only priests. Imagine being 7 years old. Dressed in white linen. Your mother whispering that you're blessed, chosen, special. Then priests lead you deep into the temple, through corridors that get darker with each step, until you reach a small room lit by oil lamps. There's a stone table in the center. They tell you to remove your clothing. We know what happened next because of the Turin Papyrus 1887, discovered in 1899 and hidden from public view until the 1960s. It describes something called the touching ritual. It was not sacred. It was not medical. It was violent, invasive, and performed by adult priests in front of scribes who documented every detail. Girls as young as 7 standing naked, crying, trembling, while men examined the seal of the goddess, using what the text calls inspection by hand. Some resisted. The papyrus says those girls were calmed with lotus wine, a sedative. And it gets darker. In 2003, Dr. Sarah Parcak examined artifacts from these rituals stored in the British Museum. She found metal ceremonial tools engraved with phrases dedicating them to preservation of purity. Forensic analysis found microscopic traces of blood and tissue from dozens of different individuals. And this was only the beginning. But maybe, after that horrific selection, these girls lived peaceful, honored lives inside the temple walls, right? That's the comforting version the official records want you to believe. The truth? The selection was only the beginning. What happened on their first night as God's wives shattered a 3,000-year code of silence. And when archaeologists finally uncovered the evidence, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities made immediate attempts to shut it down. Don't look away, because what comes next is the reason this practice is considered one of the darkest secrets in human history. After the selection, the girls were given 3 days of preparation. They were bathed in sacred oils, dressed in ceremonial linen, and told they would soon meet the god. None of them knew what that truly meant. Every Egyptologist learns about the opening of the mouth ceremony. It's in every museum, every textbook. You've probably seen the ritual tools: strange metal hooks, flattened blades, fork-shaped instruments. The official explanation? Pure symbolism. A ritual performed on statues or mummies to awaken them, allowing them to eat, breathe, or speak in the afterlife. Symbolic, spiritual, metaphorical. Except, that's not what these tools were used for inside the priestess's quarters. In the British Museum's restricted collection, behind a locked door marked EA 74121, sits a set of opening-of-the-mouth instruments excavated from Karnak Temple, specifically from the rooms where temple virgins lived. When researchers examined these in 1998, they made a shocking discovery. The instruments had been modified, sharpened, reshaped, and they showed microscopic signs of use on living tissue. Then in 2007, Egyptologist Dr. Robert Morcott examined 17 mummified bodies of God's wives. His findings were published and instantly attacked by Egypt's archaeological establishment. But the data was clear. All 17 bodies showed premortem trauma in the pelvic region. Trauma matching the exact shape and size of opening-of-the-mouth implements. The ceremony wasn't symbolic. It was physical. It was violent. And it took place on the first night these children entered temple service. Imagine being that girl again. 7 years old. You survived the selection. You've been bathed, dressed, told you're about to be awakened into the divine. A priest tells you there will be pain. That pain is part of becoming sacred. They hand you lotus wine. Your vision blurs. Your limbs grow heavy. You're laid onto a stone altar. The high priest approaches, chanting prayers designed to justify what comes next. Metal tools gleaming in the lamplight. The papyri describe this moment as breaking the seal and opening the gate to the divine. Beautiful phrases hiding unbearable violence. Some girls never made it through this ritual. Based on temple records, phrases like return to the gods within their first week, mortality rates were around 12%. They didn't ascend. They didn't transform. They died from blood loss and internal trauma. Those who survived often lived with permanent injuries. Medical studies of mummified remains show chronic infections, deep internal scarring, and long-term damage consistent with repeated procedures. So how did the priests justify this? How did they maintain it for 3,000 years without families discovering the truth? The answer lies in a single blue flower that grows along the Nile. And what they did with that flower is the reason modern Egypt refuses to discuss this chapter at all. Because it wasn't just about obedience. It was about creating victims who couldn't fight, couldn't flee, and couldn't remember. The blue lotus is everywhere in ancient Egyptian art. Carved into tomb walls. Held by gods. Woven into crowns. Historians said it symbolized rebirth. Aesthetic decoration. Nothing more. They were completely wrong. In 2011, researchers at the University of California conducted chemical analysis on preserved blue lotus from temple sites. What they found rewrote everything. Blue lotus contains two powerful psychoactive compounds. Aporphine creates euphoria, numbs pain, induces trance states. Niciferine, a sedative that causes muscular relaxation and memory disruption. Together? Nature's perfect compliance drug. And the ancient priests understood this perfectly. The Ebers Papyrus, the oldest and most complete medical text from ancient Egypt, includes detailed instructions on how to prepare blue lotus extract. But there's a section museums never talk about. A section labeled for the service of the gods' wives. The dosage instructions are disturbingly precise. Grind the petals. Mix with wine. Administer daily. Not for healing. Not for ritual. But for control. The ancient text explains that the mixture should be potent enough to quiet resistance, yet not so strong that the girls fail to wake. Think about that. The priests had a formula, an exact, perfected method, for drugging young girls into obedience. Every morning, the gods' wives were given their sacred drink. It made them calm, confused, easily controlled. Their memories blurred like half-remembered dreams. And whenever they tried to speak about their experiences, even their own words sounded unreliable to themselves. The priests called this divine ecstasy. They told the girls they were having visions, touching the realm of the gods. In truth, they were being chemically silenced. Modern studies of blue lotus reveal devastating long-term consequences. Permanent memory loss, neurological damage, impaired motor control, and psychological dependency. Dr. Andrew Sherratt, an Oxford archaeologist specializing in ancient drug use, examined skeletal remains of temple virgins and found signs of chronic malnutrition and neurological decay, exactly what long-term Blue Lotus exposure would cause. These girls weren't harmed only once during their initiation. They were kept in a drugged, compliant state for years, sometimes decades, of temple service. And all of it, every step from selection to ritual violence to chemical control, was organized, recorded, and passed down from priest to priest for nearly 3,000 years. Thousands of families offered their daughters to the temples, never learning the truth. Thousands of girls lived and died in silence, their suffering hidden behind religious authority. But the most chilling part? One priest finally broke. Haunted by what he'd done, he carved a confession into stone, a message he never meant to be found. It stayed hidden for 2,400 years until archaeologists uncovered it in a place no one expected. In 2009, during routine maintenance in a storage chamber at Saqqara, a team stumbled upon a sealed room behind a false wall. Inside, every surface, walls, floor, even the ceiling, was covered in carved writing. The script was frantic, uneven. Some lines were carved so deeply the stone was gouged. Others stop abruptly as if the writer's hands were shaking too hard to continue. It opens with, I, Amenhotep, priest of the third rank, servant of Ammonius Ra, can no longer carry this burden alone. What follows is a first-hand account from a man who participated in everything you've just heard. He lists names, ceremonies, punishments for girls who tried to escape. But the personal details are what make this confession almost unbearable. He writes, there was a girl named Nefertiti, daughter of a potter. She was 8 years old when she came to us. She cried during the selection and we gave her the lotus drink. On her awakening night, she screamed so loudly we moved her to the deep chambers. She ran away 7 times. Each time we brought her back. Each time we increased her lotus dosage. After 2 years she no longer knew her own name. After 3 years she died during a ceremony. We told her family she had risen to the gods. Amenhotep lists more than 40 other girls by name, along with their fates. He describes priests competing over who would initiate the newest arrivals, high-ranking priests claiming the first rites, and lower ranks waiting their turn. Toward the end, his writing becomes desperate. We say it is holy. We speak the prayers. We follow the rituals. But I have seen their faces and heard their cries. What God asks for this? What purpose does this serve? I know we are damned. I fear most of all that when I die, another will replace me and this will never end. Carbon dating places his confession around 300 BCE, the exact time when the practice of temple virgins abruptly vanished across Egypt. What? Because Amenhotep's confession wasn't just guilt, it was a warning. When researchers cross-referenced his account with other temple records, they uncovered evidence of what actually ended the ritual tradition, a mass poisoning. In the spring of 298 BCE, at the Temple of Karnak, more than 40 temple virgins died within 3 days. At first, priests claimed it was a divine plague. But later analysis indicates it was a deliberate overdose of Blue Lotus, administered by priests attempting to hide the truth as investigations began. Families had started asking questions. Complaints reached the pharaoh. An inquiry was ordered. And before answers could come, the girls were dead. Rather than allow their crimes to be exposed, the priests chose the unthinkable. They destroyed the evidence. But the mass deaths couldn't be concealed. Too many daughters were lost in the same week, too many families demanded answers, and according to fragmented records, some of those families refused to accept the priest's explanation of a divine plague. There are accounts of riots breaking out outside temple walls, angry crowds attacking priests, and desperate parents demanding access to forbidden chambers. The uprising was eventually crushed, but the political damage was permanent. Within 5 years, reforms under the Tamik dynasty stripped the priesthood of its unchecked authority. The practice of dedicating young girls to temple service was officially abolished. Temples were cleansed, rededicated, and Amenhotep's confession was sealed inside that hidden room, perhaps by the priest himself, perhaps by someone who found it and feared what it revealed. Either way, it remained untouched until archaeologists broke through the false wall in 2009. When the confession was translated for the first time, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities immediately attempted to classify it as culturally sensitive material and restrict access. It took intense pressure from international archaeological organizations and several leaked translations to force the information into the public domain. Even today, if you visit major museums, you won't see this confession on display. You won't hear it mentioned in standard history lectures. It lives quietly in academic journals and specialty publications that most people will never come across. Because acknowledging it means confronting painful truths about power, religion, and how easily abuse can be transformed into sacred duty. Conservative estimates suggest that between 10,000 and 50,000 young girls were subjected to this system over the course of 3 millennia. Tens of thousands of lives marked by trauma, drugging, and ritualized abuse, sanctified in the name of divine service. And for most of those 3,000 years, almost no one questioned it. Parents offered their daughters proudly. Entire communities celebrated when a girl was chosen. The entire society became complicit in institutionalized abuse because religious authority told them it was holy. Today, archaeologists still debate how much of this history should be publicly revealed. Some argue that exposing it serves no purpose but shock value. Others insist that hiding the truth is an insult to the victims, and prevents us from learning the lessons history is desperately trying to teach. I think about Amenhotep, carving his confession into stone by lamplight, terrified but determined to speak the truth. I think about Nefertiti, the potter's daughter, who screamed until they drugged her into silence. I think about the thousands of girls whose names we'll never know, whose suffering survives only as faint marks on bones studied centuries later. When you walk through the Temple of Karnak today, your guide will talk about the brilliance of the pharaohs, the beauty of the architecture, and the sophistication of ancient Egyptian religion. They won't tell you what happened in the sealed chambers beneath your feet. They won't show you the confession, the instruments, or the examination tables. But now you know, and you cannot unknow it. So here's my question for you. Should museums display the evidence they're still hiding? Should Amenhotep's confession be shown beside the golden coffins and jewel-covered artifacts? Do we owe the world the full truth of history, even when it's horrifying? Tell me what you think in the comments. If this story shocked you or changed the way you see ancient history, hit that like button and subscribe, because next week, I'm uncovering an even darker truth. The Mayan priestesses and a ritual so disturbing it makes this story seem almost mild by comparison. History isn't always glorious. Sometimes it's terrifying. But the truth is always worth knowing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.